start, obviously I just want to say good morning to everybody and to thank you for coming. It appears today I'll be a lone ranger without anyone flanking me, but all the same, I think I want to once again welcome members of the press. This is our first press conference after the youth conference that ended last week. As you are aware, this was an elective conference. What it means that you now have new office bearers in the National Executive of the Youth, which will then be the Executive Council, right, to be in charge of the affairs from now going forward. So as an elective conference, the major item on the agenda was the elections. And as commissariat, it is our responsibility to ensure that we facilitate these elections in accordance with the party constitutions, in accordance with the rules and regulations of the party, and also some of the resolutions that have been made to guide the elections of the various wings. And as a result, this too is a process that takes some preparation well before the conference. So the election process began with the selection of candidates at administrative district level. There was a circular which was issued to the various admin districts. In other words, soliciting for those who wanted to be considered for positions in the National Executive. We had guidelines, and those who wanted to be considered had to do so if they felt that they fulfilled the requirements. In terms of age, we were soliciting for applicants of those people who are at the age of 35 and below, and those who didn't have any criminal record, and those who were paid up members of the party. So those who were willing, they had to apply and submit their CVs. And that was the first stage of the process. The next stage of the process was a vetting exercise, which was now conducted by the Security Department and Head Office, where it was then looking at issues to do with whether those who had applied conformed to the requirements that were set out. So some fell by the wayside and others obviously succeeded. So you had a number of willing candidates from each party district. However, we then required each party district to make sure that they hold elections so that only one candidate would come from a party district. And these candidates coming from the administrative districts would then attend the provincial conferences. These provincial conferences were also convened to come out with resolutions for the annual conference. But apart from coming up with the resolutions, the provincial conferences also had to make sure that there are elections involving the candidates coming from the various districts, to make sure that each province would then come up with 4 candidates. So what it would mean is that 40 candidates would then come up and stand for elections at a national level. there was also a requirement to ensure that we also have a gender balance and to make sure that we have representation from the female candidates. The process also involved ranking those 4 nominees coming from each province. If, let's say, you had 4 from Mashonaland Central, as an example, you would rank them 1, 2, 3, 4 in accordance with the votes garnered during the elections. So this ranking had to be done across all provinces. So for all those 4 nominees from provinces, they were ranked 1 to 4. After the ranking, we then required those nominees to indicate the positions that they would want to apply for. For example, the national executive comprises of 40 people. So we then asked to say those who had been ranked 1 would then be considered for the first 10 positions. Those ranked 2nd would also be considered for position 21 to 30, and it goes on and on. So people were now being considered for position in accordance to their ranking. So what came out as a result is that when people indicated positions that they wanted to be considered, in some cases, you only had 1 candidate for a position, which would mean that that position is no longer going to be contested. When you had 2 or 3 people wanting to be considered for a position, it would then render these nominees for election to come up with 1. So, as I said, 4 candidates from each of the 10 provinces were required to apply for the preferred positions from the available 40 National Executive Council posts in accordance with their ranking order. Guidelines sent to the province by the Youth League required that at least 1 of the 4 candidates should be female. And as a result, out of the 40 candidates from the 10 provinces, 10 were female. Now, the final election took place at the conference, which then produced the following results. First of all the 10 provinces have equal representation of 4 members in the new National Executive Council. 3 female members made it into the top 10 of the National Executive Council. And as alluded to earlier on, the new executive has a total of 12 female members, which is 30% representation. And also what we were happy about is that this time around, the party has a National Youth Executive Council comprising youths in the right age group, that is 35 years and below. And that the whole election process was peaceful and, more importantly, very democratic. At this juncture, let me now give you the names of those who succeeded to be in the National Executive Council. As you are aware, the National Secretary for Youth Affairs is a position to be appointed by His Excellency the President. So as of now, the position is vacant until we get the appointment from His Excellency the President. Therefore, the position that comes next is the Deputy Secretary for Youth Affairs. And this, we now have our new Deputy Secretary for Youth Affairs is John Paradza, who is from Masvingo and is a current Member of Parliament and is coming from our youth side. And the Secretary for Administration is Tendai Chiwetu of Harare. Secretary for Finance, Garikai Zonde of Bulawayo. Secretary for Commissariat is Tsungai Makumbe of Mashonaland Central. External Affairs, Valeria Makonza of Marsh West, who is a female. Secretary for Security is Tubelike Mube Duke of Mantebeleland North. And the Secretary for Transport and Social Welfare, Innocent Dube of Matebeleland South. Secretary for Information and Publicity is Philippa Mukoko of Manicaland. And the Secretary for Legal Affairs is Phineas Makombe of Midland Province. Secretary for Indigenization and Economic Empowerment is Margaret Nyerere of Mashonaland East. Production and Labor is MacDonald Mbungo of Mashonaland Central. Health and Child Welfare, Lakmo Gapa of Harare. And Economic Affairs is Admire Ndlovu of Mat South. Education, Shepherd Marime of Marsh West. And Gender and Culture, Naledi Maunganidze of Masvingo. Welfare of the Disabled and Disadvantaged Persons is Future Mhlanga of Matebeleland North, and Secretary for Lands, No Meta Topotsa of Midlands. Science and Technology, Munashe Tawanda Mtuta of Bulawayo, and Business Development and Liaison, Munashe Mabika of Manicaland. And the Secretary for Environment and Tourism, Batsirai Matiza of Marsh East, and this completes the heads of department. I'll then move to the deputies. The Deputy Secretary for Administration is Mambondiani Danmo of Manicaland. Secretary for Finance, Calvin Chauke Masvingo. Commissariat, Taurai Kandishaya of Harare. External Relations, Charity Ndlovu of Mat North. And also Security, Tendai Pinduka of Marsh Central. Transport and Social Welfare, Linda Chi Namano of Bulawayo. Information and Publicity, Patience Chishumba of Midlands. Legal Affairs, Kudakwashe Mananja of Marsh West. Indigenization and Economic Empowerment, Sikalisile of Mat North. And then Production and Labor, Tawanda Mulo. And then Health and Child Welfare, Abigail Murungweni. And then Secretary for Economic Affairs, Deputy Secretary for Economic Affairs, Vusimuzi Manjonjo of Midlands. And then Deputy Secretary for Education, Olman Jovu of Mat North. And Deputy Secretary for Gender and Culture, Onismo Zandaziwa of Marsh West. Our Deputy Secretary for the Welfare of the Disabled and Disadvantaged Persons is Musimu Zimoyo of Mat South. And the Deputy Secretary for Lands is Beatrice Kamuche of Marsh East. The Deputy Secretary for Science and Technology is Auxilia Danzi of Masvingo. And the Deputy Secretary for Business Development and Liaison is Tabo Freedom Twala of Bulawayo. And the Deputy Secretary for Environment and Tourism is Tsitsi Taonera of Harare. And lastly, a committee member is Blessing Mutomba of Manikalet. This completes the Youth League National Executive Council. Now, just to explain in terms of seniority, is that your secretaries, who are the heads of department, are then followed by the committee members, and then followed by the deputies. So a committee member is actually senior to the deputies. Now this completes the whole list of our national executive members of the youths. I'm happy the conference was a big success, and I think even His Excellency the President did commend the outgoing council for a job well done, and also wishing the new executive council that they should do better than even that council before them. And I've no doubt in my mind that when you look at the caliber of those people who have succeeded in coming into the National Executive Council, I'm very optimistic that they will also in turn be very successful during their term. And as a commissariat, we will be giving them the necessary support that they start their work with the understanding and appreciation of what is expected of them. And very soon we'll be organizing for an orientation time for them. They will also go through the Chitepo School of Ideology orientation, and we'll also go through some team building exercises that they do bond and that they work as a team, and also to make sure that they play their part in the campaign towards the 2023 General Harmonized Elections. So as a commissariat, we'll be working closely with them because there's a lot of work for us to do, and in view of the fact that we have the general elections in next year, we will give priority to our youth to campaign vigorously for the party and the president. And I look forward as well that as we prepare for the women's conference, we will also come with a very strong team, a team which will also complement the efforts of the other party departments as we gear ourselves for winning the elections next year. That completes the press conference that I had called you for. But let me give you now an opportunity to ask questions if you have any. And if you have a question, if you can identify yourself, then you can pose your question. I will gladly respond to the same. Thank you so much. Any questions? Very much satisfied. No questions, no need for any clarification. And it remains for me to thank you very much for coming and for attending. And I look forward to meeting you again very soon. Thanks so much.